Nicholas has 5½ cups of flour. One recipe for a cake he is making calls for 3 3/4 cups of flour. He also needs 8 cups of flour for a cookie recipe. How much more flour will Nicholas need to make the cake and the cookies? And that last part with the question, how much more flour, we know at some point we're going to subtract. So we basically need to figure out how much does Nicholas have already, and then figure out what he needs, and then subtract to find our answer. So here's how we can set this up. Really, we're adding and subtracting fractions and mixed numbers here. So we know he already has 5½ cups, but we need to know what the total is that he will need. So it says it calls for 3 3/4 cups of flour right there. I didn't really underline that well. And then he also needs 8 cups. So we can add 3 3/4 to 8. And really, if you just do that, you can just add the whole numbers, which would be 3 and 8, which would get you 11. And then the leftover would be 3/4. So the quick way is to do it that way. The way we've practiced is to do it with common denominators and turn mixed to improper. And we can do that real quick too. So 3 3/4 converts to 15/4. We would add that to 8 over 1. You need common denominators, so we're going to use 4 as a common denominator. And that turns 8 into 32. You add 32 and 15 and get 47 over 4, which is an improper fraction. And again, that's going to make 11 3/4. So we know that's how much he needs. 11 3/4 is the same as 11 3/4 and 75 cents. So you could have worked this as a decimal also. You could have converted these to decimals and then converted back to fractions for your answer if you wanted to, because 11 3/4 again is the same as 11.75, like 11 and 75 cents. So from that we can subtract what he had, which is 5½. And we're going to do, you could again, the way these work out, you could do the whole numbers and the fractions. You can't always do that. So we're going to do mixed to improper and then do the subtraction and find the answer. Practical math does tell me though, if I have 11 and 3/4 right here, like 11.75, and I'm taking away 5½, which is like 5.50, if I just subtract the whole numbers, 11 minus 5 is 6. So I know practical number sense, my answer ought to be around 6. If you look at the answer choices for this, the only ones that are even close, the only one that's close is G. So G is probably the answer, but we'll work it out right here. So mixed to improper, 11 3/4 turns into 47/4. We subtract 5½, which is 11/2. Common denominator is going to be a 4, which turns the 11 to a 22. Subtract at the top, 47 minus 22 is 25 over 4. That's an improper fraction, so when you convert it, 4 goes into, 25 6 times, and it's 4 times 6 is 24, so the remainder is 1, and we keep our denominator. So the answer is, in fact, G, 6 1/4.